Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Dhari Jaya Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Nittai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gora Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jayom Ishpat Paramahansa Parivajacharya Stota Shakshimad Divine Grace of Vaichanara Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayom Ishpat Paramahansa Parivajacharya Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Swami Ki Jai Jai Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Radha Govinda Goswami Tinamina Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Okay. So today we are going to discuss 1031.1. Finding my just have my notes. I can share, but I just.
If you want.
Maybe later. We can. There's one verse I can share actually in a minute. Okay. Okay. Maybe okay. We'll recite the verse in a minute. So 1031.1. This is 1031 is the chapter called Gopi, the Song of the Gopis, Gopi Geet, as we know, and it's one of the most sacred and confidential sections of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, right? 1031, known as Gopi Geet, and you know, in the beginning of Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami writes wonderful verse there. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam shukamukhadamrita drava samyutam Pibat Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhur Aho Rasika Bhui Bhavukaha. Right? That this Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the Vedic tree. And the translation, "O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It's emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectar and juice was relishable for all, including the liberated souls." And this Gopi Geet, right? The Gopi Geet, this chapter 31, these 19 verses by the gopis, is the sweetest juice within that fruit. So from the whole of Bhagavatam, which is in itself nectarian and sweet, this Gopi Geet, this section here in the middle of the Rasa Panchai, 5 chapters, is the sweetest of all, right? So it's one of the most exalted confidential sections, and sometimes, although the verses are very poetic and very rhythmic, it's not ordinary poetry, right? Because these verses represent the direct outpouring of the hearts of the gopis, the topmost devotees of Lord Krishna. This is the essence. And this chapter is not philosophy in any sense. It's not like philosophy presented with logic and reasoning and argument. It's not like that at all. It's simply love crying out from the hearts of the gopis. So just putting some context here, right? So the Gopi Gita appears in Bhagavatam after the Rasa Leela, right? So Lord Krishna has already danced with the gopis and reciprocated with them perfectly with each one of them, and then he suddenly disappears, right, from the middle of the Rasa Gita. The gopis fall into extreme anxiety. They're just relishing the exchange, transcendental mellows of Madhurya Ras with the Supreme Lord Krishna. And then just as they're getting to the height of their emotions, the Lord disappears, right? Anyone know why the Lord disappears? Exactly, right? Each of the gopis started to become a little proud, thinking, Krishna is dancing with me. I must be the most fortunate woman in all of existence. I must be so beautiful. Krishna is dancing. Krishna created that mood, that impression that each gopi thought that the Lord was dancing with her alone, right? Giving her his full attention. So because of that little bit of pride, the Supreme Lord disappears, right? And the disappearance causes extreme pain, right? This extreme pain. And sometimes people say that this is very cruel of the Lord to cause such pain. But actually, we will see it is not cruelty. It is an act of love, because that disappearance and that separation actually raises the intensity of the gopis' attachment and raises their ecstasy to even a higher level, right? So this is the mood, right? So as we said, the Ras Leela has taken place. Krishna has played his flute. By his playing his flute, he summoned all of the gopis to the forest there in the middle of the night. He drew them out of their homes. They dropped everything they were doing, feeding their husbands or children or cleaning or even dressing or decorating themselves. Halfway through all of these, each one of them, they heard the flute, music of the flute, the calling of the flute, as if it was intended for them personally. And then they just all came here. And of course, Krishna expanded, danced with each one, and then he disappeared. So, as we said, Prabhupada actually writes, the Lord disappeared to increase their love. This is from the Krishna book, right? In spiritual life, separation actually intensifies love more than meeting, right? Meeting is there with the Lord, but when we're separate from the Lord, separate from our Gurudev even, right, we can feel, when that meditation, that mood, even more. So in this moment, the gopis, they're not chanting mantras or they're not discussing philosophy, they're not asking for liberation. They're simply revealing what's in the core of their hearts, and what comes out becomes the Gopi Gita. So who are the gopis? We must be very clear in understanding this pastime that the gopis, they are not conditioned souls. They are not conditioned souls, right? Prabhupada states the gopis are not ordinary living entities. They are expansions of the Lord's internal pleasure potency, Ladini Shakti. They are all expansions of Srimati Radharani. They are, by virtue of being direct expansions of Srimati Radharani in that sense, they are eternally liberated. They are in one sense Krishna's own Shakti, own energy. And of course we understand them as the highest devotees in all of existence. Even Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, desires the position of a gopi, but she cannot attain it. She cannot, because she still has this Aishwarya power for the Lord, awe and reverence. The Lord is so great, right? Whereas the gopi have a pure love. Lakshmi could not enter the rasa dance, right? Because Vrindavan devotion is not about reverence. It's about complete self-forgetfulness. Right? So this is the kind of background and context. Now, before we go into the Gopi Gita, let's just dwell a little bit on the composition, the poetic and Sanskrit nature of the Gopi Gita. It is an extraordinary poetic composition of this chapter, right? It's composed in classical Sanskrit meters, Anushtaba and other Sanskrit meters, but what makes it unique is not its just poetic nature or meter, but it's the emotional alignment. It's full of very soft consonants, la, ma, na, elongated vowels that sound like sighing and crying, and the musical cadence means it's meant to be sung, not just recited, it's meant to be sung, right? And the gopis and these have designed these verses directly for Krishna to hear, right? They're directly for Krishna to hear. And they're crying in a way that ultimately Krishna cannot resist. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that these verses are ornaments decorating the heart of Krishna. So, in terms of some more kind of technical elements of the composition, when we analyze the verses, we will see that each verse is, of course, extraordinarily beautiful, and also we'll see that for the most part, in each line of each verse, the first and seventh syllable begin with the same consonant, right? And also, the second syllables of all four lines begin with the same consonants. Can we, is the TV on?
Yeah, it's on.
Let's see if we plug this in. We'll illustrate it and as we recite the first verse. Yeah. Oh, what happened? Strange. When I plug it in. Yeah. It does something very strange here. Send me a message saying that.
Which one you selected? Oh, now it's there.
All right. Okay, so we're here. So this is what I mean. Let's chant.
There's a dual screen, so you have to.
Oh, is it? So I've highlighted them. You see the first and seventh syllable in the first verse, ja and ja. Right? There's 11 syllables in each line. And the second, shra and sha. Da and da again. Twa and twa. And this is all throughout, for most part. In some verses it doesn't. And then the second syllable of each line, ya, 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 ya. Right? This is kind of the composition of this. So let's try to recite this. Jayati te dikam janmana vraja Jayata indira shashvadatrahi Daita drisyatam dikshutavakas Tvaidrita shavas Tvam vichinvate. One more time. Jayati te dikam janmana vraja Shrayata indira shashvadatrahi Daita drisyatam dikshutavakas Tvaidrita shavas Tvam vichinvate. So, very beautiful first verse. Let's try to just understand it a little bit more. Jayati te dhikam janmana vraja, right? Janmana vraja means that you took birth here. And because you took birth here, adhikam jayati, this vraja has become glorious above all places. Even glorious, more glorious than Vaikuntha, or much more glorious than the Swargalok, heavenly planets. Raj alone becomes supreme. Why? Because the Supreme Lord, Krishna, appeared here. He is here. So Raj becomes adhikam jayati, right? He becomes glorious above all other places. Jayati ekam janmana raja. Shrayata indira shashvadatrahi. Indira means Lakshmi Devi. Shrayata. She even resides here constantly. But in this line, the gopis imply, even though she is here, she does not understand you the way we understand you. She doesn't have that mood of surrender, that total care for the Lord and disregard for themselves, right? So this is Shrayata Indira. Even Lakshmi Devi resides here, and where of course Lakshmi Devi resides, there's all wealth, all fortune, all auspiciousness is there, right? Lakshmi Devi even resides. And then in the other last two lines, they express a little bit about their feelings. So the first two lines, they're glorifying Raj as the supreme abode where the Lord has appeared, and now they're revealing their heartfelt emotions, their feelings. Daita drishyatam dikshutavakas. Your devotees, we the gopis, we are searching for you everywhere, in all of these forests, in all directions we have been searching for you, right? They're not praying in any way, they're not asking for blessings, they're exclaiming that, Lord, why have you done this? You know, you've come here, you called us, and you danced with us, you exchanged so many sweet mellows with us, and then you disappeared on us, you know. Right? So in this way, they're begging for his presence, right? And in the last line of this verse, they say that, look, if you don't come, you'll be killing us, basically. Tvai dhritashavas tvam vichinvayate. Right? Our lives are sustained only by you. Tvam vichinvayate. And it's a very direct statement. This is literal spiritual reality. Without the Supreme Lord, the gopis cannot exist. This is what they're saying, right? How can we survive without your presence, without your darshan? Just aside here, and when the gopis, Krishna called the gopis to the forest with his flute, his beautiful flute playing, they all came. And then what did Krishna say to them? Go back home, right? Go back home. Do you remember any of the arguments Krishna made? Krishna made, what are you doing? The girls in the middle of the night coming to the dark, dense forest. There are wild animals here. Aren't you concerned about your safety? One argument. Another argument, you're leaving your husbands and your families and your kids and everything. They will be in great anxiety that you've come here. They'll be searching for you, right? And then above all, they say, Krishna says, this is adharmic. How, for young ladies to go away in the middle of the night to meet someone else, it's immoral, adharmic. How can you do this, right? And then the gopis, they contested all of these arguments of Krishna, right? They said, no, adharmic and leaving our husbands, you are the husband of all living entities, right? So we have every right to meet with you, right? And as for protection from the animals, you have such strong arms, you lifted Govardhan hill. Surely you can protect us from the animals like this, right? So in this way, the gopis defeat the Lord in each of his arguments. And of course, Krishna is just kind of playing with them and arousing their emotions more and more, which leads up to the exchange of the whole Ras dance, right? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he has a nice commentary on this chapter. Prabhupada's commentary is it's not Prabhupada, it's the disciples of Prabhupada, very short commentary which just talk about the poetic meter and the fact that the syllables align and so forth. Right, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur will just read it. This chapter shines forth with the Gopi Geet, the songs of the gopis, which are like a group of lotus flowers, fragrant with the honey of prema, that manifest their sweetness in graceful melodies and rhythms. These lotus songs attract the bee named Krishna. Right, this lotus. With the blessings of Sanatana Goswami, Sridhar Swami and the Gurus in my line, whose remnants are the sustenance, I will try to explain the Gopi Geet. In the last verse of the previous chapter, it was mentioned that the gopis sang. The question may be raised, what did they sing? The answer is given in the beginning of the words with Gopya Uchuhu. This is before the Jayati Day. The gopis sang, O beloved, because of your birth, Vraj has become glorious. By not mentioning more glorious than what, the implication is that Vraj is more glorious than all other planets or places. In order to refute the idea that Vaikuntha is just as glorious, the gopis use the adverb adhikam, exceedingly, right? To indicate Vraj is exceedingly more glorious than even Vaikuntha. In other words, though Vaikuntha is wonderful, Vraj is most wonderful and the best of all places. And then the gopis state, another symptom of Vraj's unique position, Mahalakshmi, the goddess of fortune, resides here. The gopis state Indira, who served by all Vaikuntha, is always residing in Vraj, rendering service. Therefore, Vraj is complete in all kinds of opulences, even more so than Vaikuntha itself. Thus, in this Vraj, which is filled with the topmost happiness, only your beloved girlfriends are experiencing the most intolerable agony unheard or unseen by anyone at any time. How can that be? The Vraj is the most glorious, most auspicious place. Lakshmi is here, it's the topmost place. But we, your dasis, we are experiencing extreme agony and pain, right? Unseen or unheard by anyone. However, we are not begging you to remove that suffering, but please look, Drishyatam, just once at this Vrindavan which is filled with happiness. And then Krishna could, and this is the style of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he often writes his commentary in this kind of conversational exchange. So he says, Krishna will ask, what should I look at in Vrindavan? Drishyatam, what should I look at? The gopis reply, in this happy Vrindavan, those dedicated to you are dying in separation as they search for you. What a remarkable seeing. Why are you putting your devotees into danger? You should not think, how have I put you in difficulty? We have offered, Dhrita, Arpita, all our life heirs to you. We would have been happy if the life heirs which have been maddened by you remaining within our bodies had burned in the fire of separation and we had died. But instead, our life heirs are happily residing within you, the joyful Master. And Krishna replies, if your life heirs are happily situated, how can your bodies be in danger? Gopis, it seems that you derive constant happiness from seeing our misery. Okay, and then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur just highlights the same poetic nature. In this verse, the second syllable, ya, in each line is the same. Also, most verses in Gopi Geet, each line, first and seventh syllable, begin with the same consonant, as do the second syllables of all four lines. This has been described in the Mukunda Phala Tika of Vopadev. Okay. All right, so Kama versus Prema, right? This becomes the area where people, especially who haven't really become familiar with the earlier parts of the Bhagavatam or understood the real essence of who the gopis are, who the Supreme Lord is, and what the nature of their exchange is, they confuse these intimate pastimes of the Supreme Lord with his devotees, the gopis, to be along the same line as a mundane relationship between a man and a woman or a boy and a girl in the material world. And this is very clearly characterized, right, that the mundane relationships, the material world relationships, they are always based on this principle of kama. Kama, direct translation being lust, whereas the relationship and the basis of the exchange between the Supreme Lord and the gopis is prema. Now, what is the difference between kama and prema? How is what Krishna is doing with the gopis, how can we not consider that as kama or lust? And Prabhupada answers very directly in Krishna book. He says, the gopis' love is not lust, it is the highest form of love of Godhead. And what are the characteristics of kama? The kama is generally centered on the enjoyment of the individual. So my enjoyment, where am I going to get pleasure? How am I going to be happy? It's has a temporary nature, that it gives happiness, gives some pleasure for some short period of time. And then often ends in frustration. Often ends in frustration where eventually the pleasure power of that interaction diminishes, and if the desire is still not fulfilled, leads to frustration and leads to bondage and binding, right? This karma basically is driven by the senses, and when we're trying to fulfill the desires of the senses, that results in additional bondage, more bondage to the material world. Contrasting this with the gopis' emotion, prema, it's centered only on the Lord's happiness, on Krishna's happiness. It's eternal. It's eternal. Even in separation, it's bliss, and it leads to liberation, right? So gopis do not want anything. They don't even want Krishna for themselves. Gopis are willing to sacrifice anything and everything for the pleasure and benefit of Krishna. I think we've all heard this story, right? Comes, I don't think it's in Bhagavatam, I'm not sure where it is, right? That one time when Krishna is in Dwarka, Krishna gets a headache, right? He has a supreme headache, and all the queens are trying to cure the headache and so forth. And then, I think Narad Muni tells, he comes and says, there's only one way to cure this headache. You have to give, Krishna needs the dust of the feet of his devotees. And the queens say, no, we cannot possibly commit such a aparad and put the dust of our feet on Krishna's head. No, let's find some other way. No, so in this way, it goes. Narad Muni searches other places, other devotees he approaches, and nobody is ready. The devotees think, our feet on Krishna's head, we will be, committing sin. We will, suffer so many reactions because of that sin. Finally, he goes to the gopis, and gopis say, take all the dust you want. We don't mind going to, the hellish planets for as long as it takes, but if our dust is what can cure Krishna's headache, take all the dust you want, right? So this is the mood of the gopis. They don't want, they want Krishna to be happy, even if it means they have to suffer. That's the difference, right? The gopis were prepared to give up everything, including their lives, for the Lord's satisfaction, for Krishna's satisfaction. So this is the mood of the gopis. And sometimes people are reluctant to really delve into these confidential pastimes. Is it Vallabhacharya? One of the Bhagavatams, they even omitted these 5 chapters. Yeah, this one Bhagavatam edition, I think, because the Ras Panchai is because people misinterpret it as kind of a mundane material type of exchange, and they cannot reconcile that the Lord can have such an exchange. What example is it setting? So here actually our acharyas in our line say that this actually, hearing these pastimes of Krishna's intimate pastimes with the gopis, actually purifies us. Is it safe to hear this verse? Prabhupada clearly answers, by hearing the dealings of Krishna and the gopis, one becomes completely purified. Why? Because this love is completely opposite of lust. It's completely selfless, completely Krishna-centered. And just as fire burns any impurity, pure prema burns the impurity of material desire. So when we can relate to this and even theoretically accept, it's very hard for us to actually understand how the gopis actually felt for the Supreme Lord. But even if we can force our minds to accept that this is not an ordinary exchange, this is a spiritual exchange. It's described that the gopis actually went to meet Krishna in their spiritual bodies, not in their material bodies. In their spiritual bodies, no one in a material body can directly meet Krishna or have an exchange with Krishna. The gopis went in their spiritual bodies. This whole exchange of these pastimes is on the spiritual platform, not on the material platform, right? So, from our perspective, obviously we don't try to imitate the gopis. No, we're nowhere near their level, obviously. Nowhere near their level. But we appreciate them. We appreciate and we try to understand, what level is prema at? At what stage can we really, surrendering everything we have, not our material possessions and so forth, that's trivial. But the surrendering our very hearts, lives, pran, emotion, anything and everything, right? At that level of surrender, right? Where then maybe we can get a little glimpse or a little bit of an understanding of gopis, right? So we try to serve the gopis. We try to follow in their footsteps. And our prayer is, let me want to have Krishna's happiness much more than my own, right? This is such a difficult principle. We're all embedded in this whole material tabernacle of existence. And we're caught up. We have to maintain our families. We have to maintain our houses, and so forth, right? It's so hard to put Krishna's happiness first. Let me do whatever is needed for the Supreme Lord. Then everything else is secondary. It doesn't matter. The gopis gave up their husbands. They didn't care about what society would say or think. Or they didn't care even about their children, right? They gave up everything to go and serve the Lord, right? How can we develop that level mood, right? So even if we can get a little drop of that mood of giving up everything for the Supreme Lord's pleasure. The Supreme Lord's pleasure comes before anything. Even if we have to sacrifice and suffer and do anything, if we can, just get a touch of that, a tiny, tiny drop, bund of that mood, then we will see that, our devotional service will go to the next level. Go to the next level, our chanting, our lives, and of course, Krishna says, Niha bhikkhamanasus. Even if you do a little bit, Krishna reciprocates. Ye yatamam prapadyante tam sateva jamyaham. If we do a little bit towards that, Krishna will reciprocate in so many wonderful ways. But we don't have that faith, we don't have that shraddha, we don't have that conviction that if we give up everything and surrender everything for Krishna, then Krishna will take care of us, right? Just as he did with all his devotees. So, just wrapping up here, the Gopis Gita is not poetry, right? It's not poetry. It's beautiful, rhythmic, so wonderful to sing, right? Sweetest part of Bhagavatam. But it's not poetry or song. It is the soul crying out for the Supreme Lord. The soul's crying that, let me serve you, whatever it takes, let me serve you, let me try to please you, let me try to make you happy. And of course the gopis, they're at the topmost level, peak of devotion. And we just try to listen with humility. Let us hear with humility and gratitude and reverence for the gopis. So, all right, so I think it's time. That was just kind of a rush through of Gopi Gita. I picked this verse because we are currently just been going through these chapters as part of the course we're doing, Bhaktivedanta course, and I found it so sweet. So I hope gives you a little bit of a glimpse into the beautiful Gopi Gita.
Thank you, Nilamani Prabhu. Wonderful. Actually, you relish them very well. And touching the kind of sharing the glimpse of the mood of the gopis, that was wonderful. Thank you very much. Anyone has a quick question or anything you want to share?
There cannot be any question of Gopi Gita, right? It's like mood and love and everything. So, thank you, Prabhu. It was a great class.
Thank you.
Last one, which 5 chapters?
29, 30, 31, 32, 33. In 29, Krishna calls the gopis by playing his flute. Then in 30, he disappears and the gopis look for him everywhere in the forest. They ask the trees, have you seen Krishna? They ask Tulsi plant, they ask, all of the living entities, they ask the deer. Then they see footprints. Initially they see one footprint, then they see 2 sets of footprints. And they immediately say, hey, Krishna has gone off with his favorite gopi. Who is that? Who is that gopi? And there's a famous verse, the only verse in Bhagavatam that has a hint of Radharani, Anyaradhita Nunam. Right? That verse is there in chapter 30. And then they find Radharani. Krishna has even left Radharani, right? And then eventually, after searching and searching, they come back to the Yamuna. And that's where chapter 31 begins, that they recite this Gopi Git, this longing and this separation, that to try and call Krishna back. And then I think 31 is the reunion. 32 is the reunion. Right? So
one quick question. The people, the Bhagavatam, the verse, you said that
113. 113.
yeah, okay. That's why I thought when you said the before, so I was thinking, no, it's one, okay.
113.
There's this also, Shukra, some is a parrot of Radha, and that's why I did not put. I think many people do not agree with that. Right? Many people do not agree with that. Shukra Goswami,
Yes.
parrot of Radha.
Yes. One version I heard, he was a parrot when Lord Shiva was reciting to Parvati. He was a parrot and he heard the whole Bhagavatam at that time. And I don't remember the detail, but so.
That's what I have heard.
Yes.
And that's why you get ecstasies whenever he hears the name Radha and stuff. But
Yes.
I think it was also said that they said the Yamala Arjuna trees were there, right? They were seeing the Krishna's pastime directly as Krishna was there.
Yes.
But at the same time, Sukadeva Goswami recite into the same tree there.
Oh, really?
And then he is watching all the pastimes of Krishna there. So when he returned back, he was telling the same pastime because he was living in the Nanda Maharaj's courtyard. But I heard it somewhere. One
Could
thing
be.
which I feel, I heard it in one of the class, but now today I was able to connect that when the first time Meera, when she went to Vrindavan first time and she desired to see the Goswamis, and they declined kind of being a woman and so, then this is also, I heard it in one of the class, he returned to Meera and then tell Meera that, oh, you're a woman, we don't want to meet you and so. Then she said that I thought there is only one man in the whole Vrindavan. No other man.
Yes. Yeah.
There is no other man in the Vrindavan, so how can someone can decline me to meet?
Yes.
And then they called her in. So the same, I think, point Prabhuji explained in the first one, where he said that, oh, there is only one man.
Yes. Only one husband.
One husband. So, okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada,
Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada,
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Pritesh Prabhu. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bando Mohe Savadhana Mate